The whole internet is looking for their lost digital lovers. I followed the trend and posted, my first love I met on the study website in high school, Hui Jing young master. He had a bad temper but was good at his studies. We made an appointment to meet after the college entrance examination. But I stood him up. 5 years have passed. And I still remember his name was Jasper. A few minutes later. There were several replies below. I have a bad temper. I'm at the place where we agreed to meet. Have the guts to come and slander me to my face. Also, my damn surname is Zhang. One in the comment section of the video about looking for digital lovers. There are already 10,000 floors of comments. I naturally thought that the one I sent would be like a stone dropped into the sea. Unexpectedly. A few minutes later. I received a reply reminder. I have a bad temper. I was stunned for a moment and hadn't yet reacted to what this meant when a new reply came. I'm at the place where we agreed to meet. Have the guts to come and slander me to my face. Also, my damn name is Jason. I was baffled. My eyes moved to the person's name and avatar, and my heart suddenly skipped a heavy beat. And net name was Arrogant Guy. And the avatar was the only star in the dark night sky. The name was exactly the same as the one used on the study website in high school. But the avatar was the one I had used before. It was really him. When this thought emerged, my first reaction was panic. I only dared to recall him while hiding among the crowd. I was not at all prepared to confront him, just as I was at a loss. Suddenly I received a private message from a stranger in the background. Arrogant Guy, star. A short call. With no further words. After a while, another strange account sent a private message. Damn it. Stranger. This abruptly ended sentence was even more abrupt. But I immediately recognized that it was still the same person. Because then, every minute there was a new private message from a strange account. Give me your contact information. VX Kanks. This is mine. Add me. Where are you? Reply to me. Ignoring me. Huh? Great. I can borrow another 100 accounts. I looked at the non-stopping private messages in the background and knew that this person was determined to get a result once he set his mind on doing something. I sighed and replied with an ellipsis to the message. Where are you? Reply to me. For a long time. There was no reply. But new private messages were still constantly swiping the screen. I realized and was about to find his original account to reply. A latest private message caught my eye. I've been looking for you for 5 years. And I don't even know your name. Is it so difficult for you to reply? This reproach brought me back to 5 years ago. To Jason and I were once just net friends. In high school. The study website was very popular. High school students from all over the country could post and communicate on it. Mostly to compete and study. After the start of Senior 3, I often wandered around the problem-solving section. When I saw an interesting question, I would leave a message to answer it. One day, I was attracted by a math problem posted by a question poser. I'm the first in the city. And I've won an award in the Olympiad math. But I can't solve this problem. Is there any master who can help me? That problem was really difficult. It took me an hour to get the answer. After leaving a message with full sense of accomplishment, I found that another person uploaded the answer at the same time as me. He replied to me. Trash. You got it wrong. My answer is the right one. I looked through his problem-solving process and easily found the loophole. I circled that loophole and replied unceremoniously. Idiot. It's you who are wrong. In less than a minute. He also circled my loophole. Idiot. We, as if by some unspoken agreement, continued to solve the problem like in a competition. But the answers we gave could always be found with loopholes by the other side. And accompanied by civilized terms of endearment. In less than 2 hours, there were more than 99 floors of comments under that post. Until half a day passed. The question poser suddenly showed up. Sorry. Everyone. The teacher said this question itself was wrong. So there is no answer. Both of us paused simultaneously and turned our spearheads to the question poser. Arrogant guy. Are you fucking kidding me? How can this question be wrong? I was about to solve it. Ignorant kid. Don't even think about disturbing my mind of doing problems. I was about to solve it too. This time it must be right. Instantly, there were another 99 fours of comments under that post. Finally, it ended with me and Jason being banned from speaking for 24 hours. And the grudge between me and Jason was thus formed. From math to English and physics. And then to piano, painting, movies. Later, we could talk about everything. But we never told each other our backgrounds and names. Only using our net names. Because we had an agreement that we would introduce ourselves to each other when we met for the first time. In this way, our first meeting would be a reunion after a long separation. Jason's name was seen by me once when I accidentally glanced a corner of his test paper during a video call. Unexpectedly, I got it wrong. And this wrong name, I had chewed over it countless times. Just like my absurd 5 years. Going further and further on the wrong track. 3. Perhaps people always have an obsession with things that end without a real conclusion. When first getting to know someone, an introduction is necessary. And when saying goodbye, it is necessary to say goodbye. Only then can this relationship be considered to have come to an end. Otherwise, one will be preoccupied and unable to let go. I think Jason was probably like this towards me. The private messages were still coming. I closed my eyes and replied in his original account's private message. Sorry. It was my fault for leaving without saying goodbye and breaking the appointment 5 years ago. I had always owed Jason an apology. I'm sorry that I couldn't keep the appointment 5 years ago. I'm sorry. Besides apology, I don't know what else to say. If you need a formal goodbye, I won't avoid it. The private message had stopped the moment I sent my apology. But after a while, Jason only sent for short words, contact information. I was stunned. I don't think it's necessary. Not necessary? Jason seemed very excited. I was stood up. Not dumped. What do you mean? I was astonished. Jason replied instantly. We haven't broken up. You are still my girlfriend. For I never thought that the throbbing of the heart across the internet in my youth could last long. I thought that Jason came to me maybe because of unwillingness, dissatisfaction, resentment, but never because of love. Moreover, actually we hadn't really been together at all. It was just one night before the college entrance examination. When we talked about the universities we were going to apply for, we found that we had chosen the same one. Suddenly, Jason looked at me and said very seriously, there is a coffee shop opposite University A. After the college entrance examination. Let's meet there. I readily agreed. And his ears turned red. And he averted his eyes vaguely on the screen. At that time, be my girlfriend. I was stunned for a moment. And then agreed without hesitation. At that time, we were young and shy. But completely honest. Not afraid to pay for our love. But now, I don't even have the right to pay for my apology. I was silent. And Jason had already easily caught the loophole in my words. Didn't you say that if I need a formal goodbye, you won't avoid it? Then don't avoid it. Give me your contact information. I was in the wrong first. So I had to give my contact information. I thought that after adding WeChat friends, Jason would probably ask me why I had been in these 5 years first. He should ask me for an explanation, a reason, and my sincere apology. Unexpectedly, his first sentence was, I'm sorry. I have a bad temper. I will change. 5 in an instant. My eyes turned red. That proud and strong-willed young man always seemed to bow his head to me without hesitation. Because he was too irritable when we first met. I always thought he was the kind of boy who was stubborn and cared a lot about his face. Later, we had several arguments and quarrels. But every time he was the first to show weakness. He would pretend nothing had happened, and send a math problem, 129 to 2013.1. I was angry at that time and didn't look carefully at all. I just impatiently replied with a question mark. He said lightly, Sum it up. With these 2 words, the war between us was declared over. Looking back now, it seems like a lifetime ago. Maybe I hadn't replied for too long, and Jason regained his domineering. I'd have been in the coffee shop opposite University A. Come and see me. I was helpless. I'm sorry. I'm not in Huijing. Then come to Huijing. I can't go. Jason was probably angry again. Are you playing with me? We agreed to meet 5 years ago. It was you who promised. Or? After a pause. He was silent for a long time before sending the second half of the sentence. Do you have another boyfriend now? No. I blinked. And a tear fell on the screen. It's not this reason. Then what is it? My fingers stopped in the input box. After a long time, I typed out word by word slowly with tears. I don't have money to buy a plane ticket. 5 years have passed. The distance between Jason and me is not only the intangible virtual network, nor just the several 100-kilometer airline. There is also the whole 5-year time, which is enough to change a person completely. But Jason seemed to be completely unaware of it and only asked, "Where are you?" He is still so persistent. Once he has made up his mind, he will never let go. I sent him an address with a bitter smile. It was a branch of the coffee shop opposite University A in Huanan. 0 is my working time. If you are coming, please come at other times. Okay. Since he was coming, some things could be explained face to face. I put down my mobile phone and went to sleep right away. In my dream, I vaguely saw Jason's face. I wanted to reach out and touch it, but all I touched was an illusion. I woke up suddenly, without time to feel sad. I quickly got dressed and went to work. Just getting off the bus, I saw a figure standing by the wall in front of the coffee shop from a distance. At first, I thought it was a customer waiting for the coffee shop to open, until I got closer and could see his face clearly. I subconsciously stopped in place. He was stunned for a moment, and then walked towards me without hesitation. Time seemed to be stretched infinitely at that second. The young man I saw across the screen in my memory suddenly jumped out of the long river of time, and appeared in front of me unexpectedly. His features had lost their childishness, and he was surrounded by a cold sense of oppression. But his eyes and brows still showed a sharp youthfulness. Mature and flamboyant. He walked towards me step by step and stopped in front of me. It's 6 o'clock now. It should not interfere with your work. He took the earliest flight overnight, traveled thousands of miles, and had been waiting in front of the door for who knows how long. His voice was trembling when he spoke, as if he couldn't wait. He asked, "I'm Jason. And you?" 7 I looked at Jason against the light. The soft light of the morning sun stung my eyes. "Stella." I heard my own indistinct voice. "My name is Stella." "Stella," Jason repeated in a low voice. Suddenly, a smile curved on his lips. "Star. I found you." His gaze was too fervent, burning a tingle in my heart. Except for him, no one else would call me Star anymore. I quickly averted my gaze and held back my tears. "Would you like to come in and sit for a while?" I pushed open the door of the CAF and pretended to be relaxed as I smiled. "I can still afford a cup of coffee." Jason silently followed me in. "What would you like to drink?" "Anything is fine." I naturally greeted him. "Find a seat." He still stood in front of the counter and didn't leave. He just silently watched me put on an apron, wash the cups, and make coffee. His eyes were deep. He was so smart. The time for a cup of coffee was enough for him to see the clues. Right? Although we had never met before. From the occasional glimpses of the environment during our video calls before, we could guess each other's families. Jason lived in a villa. A watch on his wrist cost millions. A pair of shoes was globally limited. He was a typical young master from Huijing. And I used to be the daughter of a wealthy family. I used the same piano as him. I had an aunt and a driver for my food, clothing, and transportation. Blue Mountain Coffee. Here you are. I led Jason to a corner of the CF and sat down opposite him without hesitation. At this moment, Jason seemed more restrained than me. We silently looked at each other for a moment. Still, I couldn't hold back and spoke first. If you have any questions, just ask. Jason lowered his eyes and looked at the slightly rippling coffee in the cup. His fingertip rubbed the cup wall back and forth. After a long time, he lifted his eyelids and said in a muffled voice, "Are you not living well now?" This is not a question, but it was more heart-wrenching than a question. I didn't want to see Jason. It wasn't because I was afraid to explain to him and avoid my guilt towards him, but because I didn't want him to find out that the bright and vivid girl in his memory had fallen into the dust. 5 years ago, my father's company went bankrupt. Before I could take the college entrance examination, my mother took me abroad. Although Jason didn't ask, I couldn't not explain. I have been abroad for the past 5 years. I thought I wouldn't come back again, so I cut off all communications in China. Last month I just returned, because my mother died. She wanted to return to her roots. I used all my money to buy a grave for her, so I really can't afford a plane ticket. I omitted all the cruel details of the story and only narrated the causes and consequences plainly. Even so, with every sentence I said, Jason's face became paler. In the end, it was almost bloodless. I sat up straight and said solemnly, "I didn't mean to stand you up 5 years ago. But, Jason, I'm sorry. This apology was owed by me for 5 years." At the moment I said it, I felt a sense of loss and also smiled with relief. "Jason, thank you for coming to see me. This is also a kind of fulfillment for me." Jason didn't speak all along. He lowered his head. I couldn't see his expression. I could only see his hand holding the cup handle, tense with protruding knuckles. After a long time, he suddenly spoke hoarsely. "Why are you telling me this?" I was stunned and didn't react in time. "What?" He raised his head, revealing a pair of reddened eyes. He repeated clearly word by word. "Why are you telling me this? This is what I owe you. I should apologize to you. You are not apologizing to me." Jason's throat seemed to be choked. He said with some difficulty, "Stella, you are saying goodbye to me. 9 otherwise?" At our first meeting after 5 years, I explained to him. Was it to gain his forgiveness and hope for a reunion? I am no longer an innocent 17-year-old girl. People always have to say goodbye to their youth. As soon as I finished speaking, there was movement at the door. It was other staff coming to work. I looked at Jason, who was still in a daze. Apologetically, I got up. "Sorry. I should go to work." Jason closed his eyes. "Can I sit here for a while?" "Of course. You are a customer." Jason's lips trembled. After all, he didn't anymore. But when he sat there, he stayed until it was time for me to hand over my shift. During this period, many girls who came to the CAF were secretly looking at him. A few bold ones even came forward to ask for his contact information. I glanced over. He was just looking at me intently. I immediately shifted my gaze and focused on my work and didn't pay attention anymore. Until a female customer came to ask for a cup of takeaway coffee before leaving. I handed it to her. She just took back her gaze from Jason. Looking envious, she said to me, "Your boyfriend is really handsome." Before I could refute, she had already left. After I handed over my shift, as soon as I packed up my things, Jason had already walked up to me in a few steps. "I'm hungry. Let's go eat." He naturally took my hand and hurriedly walked out of the CAF. At some point, a car had parked at the door. The driver waiting beside the car handed over the keys and then stepped aside. Zhang. As soon as I opened my mouth, in a daze, I had already been stuffed into the passenger seat. Jason leaned over to fasten my seat belt for me. I was startled and quickly fastened it myself. He paused and turned back, his hand on the steering wheel. He chuckled. "What would you like to eat?" I had fought with Jason countless times before. I was all too familiar with his tactics. His aggression was always direct and overbearing. forcing you to enter his territory and voluntarily become his prey. In the first round of our first meeting, I was defeated. Anything is fine. 10 Jason seemed to be very familiar with Hue and An. He didn't turn on the navigation. In 20 minutes, he drove the car to a local restaurant. Seeing the familiar store name sign, I was in a trance for a moment. You said there was a very delicious local restaurant near your school. I tasted all the local dishes in Hue and thought it was this one. I turned my head in surprise and met Jason's expectant expression. It's this one. I was silent for a moment, with a bit of nostalgia. But it used to be not here near no. One middle school. It was on the experimental side. No wonder. Jason smiled self-mockingly and said casually, I searched among all the girls who graduated from no. One middle school 5 years ago. But I couldn't find you. There are so many people named Xing Xing. There are countless children in Hue and An whose pet names are Xing Xing. Jason doesn't know my real name or where I went to school. He can only make speculations based on a few clues. A little error may lead to a large deviation. I really wanted to ask him how he had spent these 5 years. But I didn't dare. I hung my head, avoided answering. And Jason didn't speak again either. The meal was long and silent. Until near the end, Jason suddenly called me, Stella. I looked up and saw him sitting up straight, with a solemn face. I think it's necessary for me to make a formal self-introduction. My name is Jason. I'm 23 years old this year. I'm from Huijing. I don't smoke or drink. And I have no bad habits. I have a car, a house, group stocks, and my own startup studio. I'm quite wealthy. I didn't understand what he meant and heard him continue. I'm not close to my family. I can freely decide my marriage. If you are worried about the troubles of visiting relatives after marriage, I can also break away from my family. I have no requirements for the city where I will settle in the future. Most importantly, Jason smiled, and a spring-like warmth seemed to flow through his eyes and brows. I'm very moral in terms of male-female relations. In my life, I will never have dinner alone with a woman other than my girlfriend, let alone pay the bill for another woman. So, Stella, be my girlfriend. His words stopped here. Seeing that I hadn't responded for a long time, he stopped smiling. He handed out the receipt that the waiter had just brought. And his voice suddenly became gloomy as if his face had changed. This meal costs 5,000 yuan. You pay the bill. Me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And also felt a tinge of bitterness. I choose to pay the bill. Without hesitation, I reached out to take the receipt from Jason. But he dodged. Jason's face obviously became very ugly. Where do you get the money? I was calm. I can borrow it. Jason couldn't believe it. You can borrow 5,000 yuan to reject me. But you can't borrow 1,000 yuan to buy a plane ticket to see me. Buying a plane ticket is also to reject you. But a round-trip plane ticket is only 2,000 yuan. I nodded seriously. Now I'm at a loss of 3,000 yuan. Jason. Jason's face was so stinky that it could hold a soy sauce bottle. He suddenly stood up and angrily went out to pay the bill. This restaurant is a Chinese-style garden-style building. After Jason paid the bill, instead of walking out, he walked towards the corridor in the back courtyard. His whole back seemed to be expressing, I'm so angry that I'm running around without thinking. I sighed softly and helplessly followed him. He was still as hot-tempered as before. Like a powder keg. In the past, he often had a stinky face. When I asked him why he was in a bad mood, he was still stubborn. I'm not angry. I'm not in a bad mood. Who do you look down on? At that time, after getting along for a long time, I already knew how to soothe his temper. Yes. Brother Shu Ai is so cool. Who dares to make him angry? I'm blind. Before he exploded, I abruptly changed the topic. Well, I just learned a cold joke today. Do you want to hear it? Jason snorted. If you want to tell it, just tell it. I told a few cold jokes and interspersed some funny daily events. Jason's face gradually softened. He still pouted, trying to hide his smile, and muttered, "Boring. I don't know what you are doing." I smiled. "I'm coaxing you." Jason's expression in the video would freeze. His face would turn red all of a sudden, and he would hurriedly press the hang up button in a fluster. He was really cute like that. So occasionally I would deliberately make him angry and tease him, and wouldn't stop until I made his face turn red. The past flashed by. I smiled and quickly took 2 steps forward and grabbed the corner of Jason's clothes. "Jason." Jason immediately turned around and held my hand in reverse. Seeing his expression, I was stunned and the words were stuck in my throat. Jason took a step forward, put one hand around my waist and blocked my retreat. His shoulder became heavy as he buried his head in my neck, and his voice was hoarse. "I'm angry," he said. "Xing Xing. Coax me." The moment I was hugged by Jason, I suddenly realized very clearly. Love can't be restrained. Even if it is covered by the dust of 5 years. Even if we rationally weigh the pros and cons and analyze calmly. But as soon as he gets close, my heart will tremble and betray myself. "Stella. I regret it. I should have known your name earlier. Then, maybe I could have found you 5 years ago." I froze, opened my mouth, and a bitter taste rose in my throat. A warm and wet feeling fell on my neck, and Jason's voice had a nasal tone. "Why did you reject me?" I raised my hand and put it on his back, resting it lightly, my fingertips trembling and not daring to touch. "Jason, it's been 5 years. I tried hard to keep my voice steady. I've changed a lot. I'm no longer the girl you would like. Who are you to decide whether I would like you or not?" Jason raised his head and slightly widened the distance between us. He looked directly into my eyes, his pupils fixed, almost staring. I have imagined our encounter countless times, but I have never presumed what you should be like 5 years later. Because no matter what you become, it doesn't matter. As long as you are Stella. As long as you show up. No matter 5 years, 10 years, or how many years. My love is not that cheap. Why do you look down on me? A teardrop fell from the corner of his eye, blurring my vision as well. "I don't look down on you." Jason interrupted me. "If you rejected me because of the 5-year gap between us, then you are looking down on me." I was speechless. "If you rejected me because you don't like me," Jason choked for a moment and emphasized, "then start liking me from now on. You liked me once. It's not difficult to like me again." I looked at the seriousness in Jason's eyes and was speechless for a long time. In the second round, I was defeated once again. I need time to think. 13. Against Jason. One step back means continuous retreat. That day, he led me into a certain situation, and I loosened my mouth to say that I would think about it. And then he seized the handle. My daily schedule is tight. I work in a coffee shop in the morning, go to the library to prepare for the self-taught higher education examination for adults in the afternoon, and have a job as a pet sitter in the evening. At first, Jason just came to sit in the coffee shop. Within a couple of days, all the employees and regular customers in the coffee shop took it for granted that he was my boyfriend. At noon, from him accompanying me to eat bread to later he taking me to restaurants. From him accompanying me to take the bus to him becoming a driver by driving his car. He began to appear frequently in my life, constantly probing and encroaching, like a patient hunter. I was vigilant and also a little helplessly indulgent. I could only ask him, "Jason, don't you need to go to work?" "No. I'm the boss," I said seriously. "But I don't want you to delay your own life because of me." "Then you should agree to be my girlfriend earlier. You've already delayed my marriage for 5 years. In the past, I basically won when bickering with Jason. But now, for some reason, I can't out-talk him. My retreating stance makes Jason be insatiable." One day, after coming out of the coffee shop, it was time for dinner. He drove his car and took me to his home in Huainan. I asked Jason warily, "What do you mean? Are you scared? Jason leaned closer, smiling maliciously. What do you think it means when a man takes a woman home? I was speechless and ignored his overacting, stepping into the elevator nimbly. Jason chuckled gloomily twice and followed me in, saying dejectedly, "Xing Xing, why are you so hard to deceive?" I knew he wouldn't do anything improper, but I really didn't expect that he took me home just to cook by himself. I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched him silently as he was busy in the kitchen wearing an apron with skillful techniques. For a while, I was in a trance. Didn't you say that you like men who can cook? Jason was cutting vegetables while being cute. I learned it on purpose. If it tastes good, you should give me extra points. But what did Jason say before? I said that girls like men who can cook. And he sneered, I can afford the world-famous chefs. Why should I suffer myself? It turns out that in these 5 years, not only I have changed a great deal. 14, I was eating the dishes made by Jason. They were obviously delicious. But I didn't feel good in my heart. After the meal, he stuffed me into the study. The environment here is better than that in the library. Don't worry. I won't disturb you. These days, following me to the library, he secretly remembered and prepared all the materials I needed for study. This was the meticulousness that I couldn't have imagined Jason would have before. I sat in the study, which was obviously tidied up in advance, absent-minded for the first time while studying. Finally, it was time to go to my next job. I went out to say goodbye to Jason. After looking around, I saw Jason in the piano room. He was sitting on the piano chair in front of the French window. And in front of him was the brand name piano that I once had. His eyes were fixed on the outside of the window. And he was in a daze with a vacant expression. I walked over. Jason, I should go. Jason turned his head, with the little ripples in his eyes. He said, Stella, since I was 18, no one has played the piano for me anymore. I was stunned. On Jason's 18th birthday, I once played a piano piece as a birthday gift for him through the screen. He said this so calmly, but I felt sadder than ever. I never understood before why Jason, such a nice person, always seemed unhappy. It seemed that fate had never been kind to him either. Jason, I can't play the piano anymore. I raised my right hand and said calmly. 4 years ago, I got into a fight with someone, hurt my arm and wrist bone, and can no longer play the piano. Jason's expression shattered in an instant, and the sorrow in his eyes was surging like waves. But I was very calm. When I said that I needed time to think, wasn't it also to give Jason time to think? The more he gets to know the present me and the more he knows about my past mess, he will retreat sooner or later. I confessed to him, with a bit of cruel coldness, my hands have carried plates, fought, been stained with blood, held guns, but never touched the piano again. I closed my eyes and restrained the trembling of my voice. Jason, I have killed people. 15. Since that day, Jason hasn't come to see me frequently. He left me a key and a text message. I'm going back to Huijing for a while and will be back soon. You can come into my home at will. I didn't go. I suspected that he was running away. But I didn't explore further. No matter how he thinks of me, no matter how he chooses, I have never thought of relying on him to get out of trouble. I keep my own pace, working part-time and studying, in order to make the future as less bad as possible. On the third night, after Jason left, after I finished washing up and lay on the bed, I suddenly received a WeChat message from my colleague. Stella, is this man your boyfriend? My colleague sent a video screenshot. The shot was very blurry, but it still couldn't hide the handsomeness of the figure in the picture. I recognized that it was Jason at the age of 18. The title of the video in the screenshot was, On the Spot Shooting of the XXTH Freshman Registration at a University. My colleague sent a new message. He's on the video hot search. Go and have a look. That video app. On the very night when I got in touch with Jason, I had deleted it. I reinstalled the app and logged into my account. Before I had time to click on the hot search, I was bombarded by a flood of incoming message notifications all over the screen. The reply notification was 999. And the backstage private message notification was 999. I opened it blankly and only then discovered that the comment I had left under the Digital Lover video had been pushed to the top. Below were all the replies from netizens. Oh my god. Are you the star that the cool guy has been looking for 5 years? Are you a real person? I'm about to cry. Why did you just show up? We all thought you were gone. The digital couple I shipped 5 years ago has come back to life. Please. Can you get married on the spot? I was completely confused. And my heart was inexplicably racing. I had an intuition that I was touching something I couldn't bear. I backed out and opened the hot search. And saw the hashtag at a glance. The cool guy's star. 16 inside the hot search was a clipped out video. 5 years ago, on the day of the freshman registration at a university, an uploader went to the scene to shoot. The camera swept over the passing freshman and suddenly jerked to the other side. The off-screen voice of the uploader came. Sisters. Help. I've seen an extremely handsome guy. The camera fixed on a tree not far away. And Jason in a white shirt was walking past with his head down. This is definitely the most handsome one I've ever seen at a university. As soon as the uploader finished speaking, Jason seemed to sense something, and he glanced sideways at the camera. He frowned impatiently, turned his head and quickened his pace to keep walking forward. Ah. The handsome guy seems angry. I originally wanted to go up and interview. Suddenly, Jason stopped not far away, and turned around and walked towards the camera. He stood still in front of the camera, fully revealing his stunning face, and asked in a deep voice, Are you shooting a video? Where will this video be uploaded? The uploader was flattered and quickly replied, It will be placed on the official account of a university. I have 1 million followers on my personal account. And I will also post it. Will all the freshmen at a university see it? Basically, freshmen will all follow the school account. Jason hesitated for a while and asked, Then, can I say something to my girlfriend? The uploader nodded. And Jason then faced the camera and said solemnly, I've been waiting for you in the coffee shop opposite to university. And I will wait until you come. After Jason finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. The uploader hurriedly stopped him and asked, Why don't you talk to your girlfriend directly? I can't get in touch with her anymore. Did you break up? Jason glared at the camera a little angrily. No. We're just out of touch. Jason turned around and left. And the uploader shouted behind him, Hey. What's your girlfriend's name? Maybe I can help you find her. Jason looked back. And the corners of his lips curved slightly. Star. Her online name is Star. After a pause, he added, My online name is Cool Guy. 17 The video ended here. Because of my comment under the Digital Lover video. Netizens followed the clues and dug out this 5-year-old video again. And in the comments section of this video, the top few replies were as follows. The follow-up of the video is that this uploader would go to find Cool Guy every year during the A university opening later, asking him if he had found his star. It has been almost 5 years. And Cool Guy has never found her. The uploader has also visited many other universities across the country and has been helping him look, but has not found her. Cool Guy is the campus heartthrob of a university. All the students at a university know that since he entered the school, he has been looking for a girl named Star. And everyone is helping him. In his sophomore year, Cool Guy bought the coffee shop opposite to university. The name of that coffee shop is now called Chasing the Star. Although it's not nice to say this, but we all think that the girl named Star may be gone. But Cool Guy really loves her so much. How I hope he can find her. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't have the courage or the strength to look any further. I withdrew from the video with trembling hands and unexpectedly saw the still refreshing backstage private messages. Strangers one by one were all asking the same question. Are you his star? The mobile phone fell to the ground. I covered my face and buried it in my palms. And couldn't help crying uncontrollably. No, it's not anymore. His star has already fallen. 18 for 5 years. Jason has been desperately looking for me. And what about me? I've been desperately trying to survive. What I didn't tell Jason was that after my father went bankrupt that year, he was stabbed 6 times by an extreme employee in the company. I was seen by my mother. She maintained her last bit of sanity and arranged her affairs. She hurriedly took me abroad. Almost as soon as the plane landed, she went crazy. That year I was not even 18 years old. No one told me what to do. The high medical expenses quickly exhausted our money. We lived in a chaotic slum. Gangs. Homeless people. Drug dealers. I was thrown into a stinky ditch. I was pointed at with a gun. I almost lost my virginity. After surviving and running home, our house was robbed. My mother was lying in a pool of blood. In the confrontation with the robbers, I accidentally shot and killed a person. The court ruled it as self-defense. But I couldn't get over it myself. But that didn't matter. Because my mother was injured and needed to be hospitalized, I had to numb myself and continue to run around for money. Until one day, my mother regained her sanity briefly. In order not to burden me, she committed suicide. Her last words were that she wanted to go home. I struggled in the quagmire. Filth stuck to me. My hands were stained with blood. I carried sins. I was long unclean. How could someone like me stand with Jason? The stars only seem beautiful when they are observed from afar in the sky and borrow light. When you approach them or when they fall, they are just an ugly stone. Jason should be with a clean girl as pure as moonlight. And after I cry, when I wake up, I still have to run around for life as usual. When my colleagues carefully ask, I smile. Sorry. I don't know. He's not my boyfriend. 19 life is very bitter. But occasionally there is a little sweetness. My evening job is as a pet sitter. I go to the employer's home to provide services such as feeding, cleaning, and playing with their pets. The employer is a 30-year-old single man. Due to work reasons, he is often on business trips and not at home. His pet is a very cute border collie named Fuguai. After taking care of it for almost a month, Fuguai and I have become very familiar. Every time I just enter the door, he will wag his tail and pounce on me and hug my leg, healing my exhaustion for the whole day. On this day, after taking care of his daily needs, I was just about to go out for a walk with the dog, when I met the employer who had just returned home. I was surprised. So early today? The employer is a warm man. Like an older brother. He is approachable. My daily communication with him is very easygoing. He nodded and smiled. I haven't accompanied Fuguai out for a long time. Today I'll walk him myself. By the way, I'll see you out. We walked downstairs side by side. Today, Fuguai is extremely excited and keeps circling around our feet. At the entrance of the community, he still bites my trouser leg as if reluctant to let me go. Fuguai regards you as family. I squatted down and touched Fuguai's head. Looking up, I smiled at the employer. It's my honor. The employer also smiled. He raised his phone. I transferred the money to you. I'll still hire you for next month. A pet sitter only goes to the employer's home once a day. Generally, they will serve several families at the same time. This employer gave a price higher than the market price. He hoped that I could focus on taking good care of Fuguai. Just in time. I have to balance my studies. Naturally. I agreed. I got up and said goodbye to both of them. Then I turned and left. As soon as I turned around, I saw Jason, who I hadn't seen for several days, leaning against a lamppost by the side of the road. His gaze was withdrawn from behind me. His deep gaze penetrated through. His expression was unreadable. I paused. Jason used to send me here every evening, but he didn't know that I was coming here for work. He thought I lived here. 20 thoughts of the conversation with the employer just now. The interactions with Jason during this period. And Jason's youthful vigor at 18 and my 5 years of darkness flashed through my mind. At that moment, I made a decision. I walked towards Jason and said calmly, "Jason, I'm selling myself." Jason's pupils trembled slightly. His face was full of undisguised hurt. "If you can't see the end, then you should say goodbye neatly at the fork. Don't waste time on me anymore." I left a sentence and walked forward without looking sideways. At the moment of passing by, my wrist was suddenly grabbed firmly. "Stella, do you want to piss me off?" Jason gritted his teeth. Flames of anger burned in his eyes. He asked angrily, "Do you want me to misunderstand you like this? Do you look down on me so much?" The cold and hard mask I had built up instantly cracked, leaving only helplessness. Jason had already grabbed my hand and turned around. He took me forward without hesitation. I was led by him, without a direction. I stumbled and followed. "Since you are so unclear-headed, then let's first get some fresh air and clear your mind." I knew I had said the wrong thing. Jason was really angry. I lowered my head. My chest was filled with a dense pain like being pricked by needles. I felt sad but also felt that I didn't deserve to be sad. I don't know how long we walked. As night fell, the city lights gradually lit up. Jason stopped by the lake near the park and turned around. I looked up. The night wind by the lake blew through the treetops and fell. It brought a cool chill. Only then did I realize that winter was coming. "Stella, I don't want to waste time anymore." Jason looked at me. The sparkling lake was reflected in his eyes. I thought that after waiting for 5 years, I would have enough patience. I went back to Huijing and dealt with all the troubles. I couldn't wait to come back and find you. I was prepared to slowly deal with you. But just now when I saw you, you could smile at others. But then you pushed me away in a self-destructive way. How cruel you are to me. A night wind took away my breath. My vision gradually blurred. I'm not afraid of your rejection. I'm not afraid of your evasion. I'm only afraid of not being able to find you. So, I won't give myself a chance to lose you again. At this moment, the wind stopped. I clearly heard Jason's voice. He said, "Stella, let's get married." 21 How can I reject Jason? I take a step back, and he takes 2 steps forward without hesitation, laying bare his heart. He is straightforward, passionate, and honest. He comes to me with the light of the whole world. After so many years, I still can't help but be moved by him. "Jason, I can't play the piano anymore." "I know." "Then be my listener, and I'll play for you in the future." "I only have a high school education. You're preparing for the self-study examination. I know you'll pass it. I'll help you." I choked up and tried to show all my wretchedness in front of him. "I've killed someone." Before I could finish my words, Jason's eyes suddenly turned. "It wasn't your fault." His eyes seemed to be able to look into people's hearts, forcefully tearing apart all the darkness deep in people's hearts. Jason emphasized his tone and repeated it again. "Stella, it wasn't your fault." The endless abyss hissed behind me. I stood on the edge of the cliff and looked down. Jason's voice echoed in my ears. I turned my head and saw Jason reaching out his hand to me. I sighed softly. All right. I believe you. I'm walking towards you. I love you so much. Let's go home and get married." As soon as the words were spoken, Jason was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, a bang sound came from the distance. A cluster of fireworks rose on the other side of the lake. The light was reflected in Jason's bright eyes, making him look resplendent, almost like a god. He glanced at the distance sideways, turned back in surprise, but saw me with a suddenly pale face. I took a step back, closed my eyes and fell into the darkness in panic. "Stella?" Jason's call became unimportant. I was trapped in a cage made of endless blood. The sound of gunshots lingered in my ears. I began to tremble, raised my hand to cover my ears and tried to curl up. "Stella. Star." I fell into a warm embrace. Just as I was about to bury my head and hide, a pair of hands gently lifted my head. My lips felt cold, but a scorching heat rushed towards me. I subconsciously opened my eyes and was caught off guard to meet Jason's dark pupils, which were very close. His eyes were only filled with me. "Look at me," Jason suddenly spoke, and I slightly opened my lips in surprise. I was controlled and trapped in an extremely lingering and seemingly endless deep kiss. In an instant, the world was silent. I forgot the gunshots, the stress response, and those days of hopelessness. I only remembered, and would always remember, on that night, with rippling lake light, Jason whispered in my ear, "Stella, don't be afraid. I love you. I love you when the stars shine in the far sky. And I also love you for coming into my gloomy life." Since then, as time passes and everything changes, the starlight will never fade. End of the main text. Jason's side story. 1. Jason wasn't a child who grew up in love. When he was born, his grandfather had just passed away. The group was in turmoil, and his parents were busy with business. By the time the group stabilized, Jason was already past the age of needing to be coddled. What his parents gave him the most was money. He had everything he wanted since he was a child. Jason didn't think there was anything wrong with this. And he didn't think he lacked love either. Until he was in junior high school. His mother was pregnant with a second child. Jiang's father and mother, feeling guilty about their neglect of Jason in the past, made up for all their debts to the second child. From getting up at night to feed, to toddling, to babbling, they did everything by themselves. Jason felt inexplicably uncomfortable in his heart. But he also knew that he had grown up, and shouldn't compete for favor with his younger brother. But when he was playing with his younger brother, he accidentally let his younger brother fall to the ground. His mother ran from a distance, picked up his crying younger brother and coaxed him, but only scolded him. "How did you let your younger brother fall? You're the older brother. You should protect him." Since his younger brother was raised in the palm of their hands, it was doomed that he would get more of his parents' love. Jason noticed his parents' partiality from more and more trifles, and accumulated more and more negative emotions. He began to become irritable and lose his temper randomly. Like a childish person trying to attract his parents' attention by making mistakes. What he got, as a matter of course, was only blame and misunderstanding, as well as comments from others. The eldest son of the Zhang family was irritable and had a bad temper, while the youngest son of the Zhang family was gentle and obedient. It seemed that the Zhang family would have to count on the youngest son in the future. Since then, he fell into a vicious cycle. In high school, the psychologist once reminded Jason that he had signs of bipolar disorder. Jason didn't care and almost wished for self-destruction. Until his senior year in high school, he met his star. At first, Jason was very unhappy with the female netizen named Star. That girl almost opposed him everywhere. He was rarely in the mood to do a math problem. But he met his Waterloo on her. He casually wrote an English sentence under someone else's post. But she caught his grammar mistake. His physics was not very good. He tried to avoid a physics duel with a few words. But she still taught him a lesson. As proud as Jason was, how could he bear it? Piano, painting, movies. Their opinions often differed, and neither of them would give in. But as they communicated more, Jason was surprised to find that beneath all those differences, they were amazingly similar. Jason admired Ravel's music, while Star liked Debussy's. But both of them belonged to the French school of music, and they both hated the Italian school of music led by Paolini. Moreover, the topics they could talk about were so rich that Jason felt how boring it was to talk to other people. Most importantly, when their topics involved the third person, she would always stand on his side. He talked about how his father was furious when he handed in a blank paper in the citywide unified examination, which made him laugh. Star wouldn't blame him like others, look down on him, or persuade him not to oppose his father. She was very calm, just slightly frowned. But this is not cool at all. Before Jason could refute, She said. You should get the first place in the exam. Then invite your parents to attend the awards ceremony. You can stand on the podium and give a speech. Thank my parents. The honors I have obtained have nothing to do with them. This is more in line with your cool guy persona. Jason was stunned. After being amused by her, he actually couldn't help but do as she said. He changed the way he used grades to retaliate against his parents, and learned not to use self-consuming methods to exchange for chips. Jason knew that every step was a trap that Star was leading him to change. But he was willing. As she wished. She was really like a star hanging in the dark night sky, guiding him out of confusion, and becoming a better person. Jason knew that he had a bad temper. People around him couldn't stand his moodiness, and he often brought his daily negative emotions to Star. He had a stinky face, was stubborn, loved to be angry, like a hedgehog. The jokes she told were cold and not funny. Her technique of changing the topic was stiff, but she was always willing to coax him. It was she who taught him patience, tolerance, and emotional stability. So she was the only person he would yield to. On Jason's 18th birthday, his family held an adult ceremony for him. There was a lot of toasting. The so-called banquet was just a business field for those adults. Jason hid in his room. He was in a bad mood and subconsciously dialed Star's phone. After connecting, he pretended to be calm again. Star, it's my birthday today. Then wait. I'll give you a birthday present. Star hung up the phone and made a video call. She was sitting in front of the piano in the corner of the room. The phone was placed diagonally above the piano. Jason couldn't see her face. He could only see her pair of long and white hands falling on the keys and flying like butterflies. It was Debussy's Garden in the Rain. After playing a piece, Star picked up the phone and brought her face close to the screen. She was very close to the lens. Her smiling eyes were slightly curved. The starlight also spilled. Happy 18th birthday. She tilted her head and coaxed. For my sake. Don't be unhappy today. It was so strange. She could tell that he was originally unhappy even though he didn't say anything. Jason couldn't tell what he felt at that time. He only knew that he had an urge to cry. Jason had received all kinds of gifts since he was a child. Most of them were expensive, luxurious, and of great value. But what Star gave him was something he had never received from his family or others. That thing was called preference. Jason felt how lucky he was. He met a unique star in the vast universe. He was like a prince guarding a rose. He guarded that star every night and waited for her to descend. But one day, she disappeared into the night and there was no news ever since. Jason tried many methods. He bought the CAF and let every employee know of her existence, to ensure that she would be recognized the moment she stepped into the CIF. He built his studio in the office building next to the CIF, to ensure that after she came, he could appear in time. He went to Hua in every winter and summer vacation, and wandered aimlessly, hoping for a miraculous encounter. For every person who might be Star, no matter where they were, he would fly to meet them in person. He really tried very hard. Countless people advised him and told him that either Star was no longer there, or she didn't want him anymore. Otherwise, he was on the hot search. How could there be a person in modern times who didn't go online? Jason would rather she didn't want him anymore. But he couldn't give up. Under the video of looking for a digital lover, there were 10,000 floors of comments. In the 10,000 floors of comments, there were countless sub-comments. Jason scrolled through a whole day. His eyes were almost blind from scrolling. But he still didn't find a clue. Just when he was about to give up, and was going to post a reply himself to try, a new reply from a netizen named Star jumped into his field of vision. Jason cried and smiled. See? Fortunately he didn't give up. If someone asked Jason if these 5 years were long, he would say very coolly, just 5 years. It always takes some time for a star to land on Earth. He could only be glad. In the end, the star landed in his arms. Little Easter egg in Senior 3. There were still 5 days until the college entrance examination. All courses had been changed to self-study. The people in the key class had no exam pressure. The class was lively and noisy. Everyone's hearts were not on studying. Jason, did you see that news? A company went bankrupt. The boss was stabbed to death in the company. The desk mate came over with his phone and sighed while saying, "What a tragic death. TSK TSK. Jason was lying on the table. When he glanced and saw massive red blurred by mosaic, he immediately frowned and pushed it away. Get lost. The desk mate walked away embarrassed and continued to browse the news on his own. Suddenly, he saw a photo and came over again. Wow. Pity his daughter. She is still a super beauty. Jason had already turned his head to the other side. Hearing this, without looking back, he raised his hand to drive him away. Get lost. I'm a person with a girlfriend. I don't look at other women. His other hand was holding his phone and a chat page was open. There are only 5 days left until the college entrance examination. He curved his lips and sent a text message to the other person. He remembered that she had said that she wouldn't look at her phone a week before the college entrance examination. But he just couldn't help but want to say something. Star. I can't wait a bit. After the exam, I will go to Huainan to find you. Okay? There was no reply from the other end of the phone. And behind Jason, the desk mate reluctantly swiped away a photo. In that photo was 17-year-old Stella. Year-old Stella. Year-old Stella. Year-old Stella. Year-old Stella. Year-old Stella. Year-old Stella.